we got?
Just came in. Heart attack. 5'9", 300 pounds, 32 years old.
How the hell does that happen?
Can I get a, Could be developing diabetes. You have to make a change. Oh, yeah.
You're graduating. Watch TV. You won't even have to leave.
You can't do this.
Yes, can I get a...
Yeah, no, deep dish.
You have to make a change. Good job, Jim. You got an A+.
Here are your fries, sweetie.
I still can't believe you give this child fresh ice.
I know. But it's the only thing that'll make him stop.
Obesity is a worldwide pandemic and a major health problem. According to the World Health Organization, the worldwide prevalence of obesity nearly doubled between 1980 and 2008. South Africa is said to have the highest obesity rate in sub-Saharan Africa, with up to 70% of women and a third of men being classified as overweight or obese. The rapid increase in prevalence amongst children and adolescents is also a major concern. Obesity is not only an important cause of disability and premature death, but increases the risk for a wide range of chronic diseases, including hypertension, coronary artery disease, various cancers, and diabetes. So obesity is common, serious, and costly. In our show today, we have expert guests who will help us understand the effects obesity has on our health, how it impacts on employment and productivity, and most importantly, how we can deal with this problem in both children and adults. Be part of the show by calling us with your questions or views on Johannesburg 714-6843, 6847, or 6857. Or interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, Twitter @SABC Health Talk. Sit back, relax, and learn from this exciting show ahead. I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Health Talk.
More than 2 in 3 adults are obese. More than 1 in 20 adults are considered to have extreme obesity. About 1/3 of children and adolescents ages 6 to 19 are obese. Furthermore, 35% of adults over the age of 20 are obese. In 2010, overweight and obesity were estimated to cause 3.4 million deaths. South Africa has the highest overweight and obesity rate in sub-Saharan Africa, with up to 70% of women and a third of men being classified as overweight or obese. 40% of women in our country are obese according to the Heart and Stroke Foundation. The bulk of our population used to be physically active, particularly in 1970 to 1999, and ate a diet high in fiber and indigenous vegetables, low in animal protein and refined carbs. However, due to the increased urbanization, people are adopting more a westernized diet, high in unhealthy fats, sugar and salt, greater disposable income and faster-paced lifestyle, and have resulted in people consuming more fast food and convenience foods. This according to the European Association for the Study of Obesity. The Department of Health realizes the seriousness of obesity crisis and has included this in the National Non-Communicable Disease Strategy's goals to assist obesity problems in increasing physical activity by 10% by 2020, reduce the consumption of alcohol by 20% by 2020, reduce the percentage of people who are obese and overweight by 10% by 2020. Obesity has a significant impact on health and well-being, It may also burden a person's workplace abilities. Workers who are obese may need longer rest breaks to return to their initial state of muscle function. About 2.6 million people die each year as a result of being overweight, according to the World Health Organization.
This situation demands urgent strategic action encompassing a wide range of sectors, including those responsible for food and beverage production, manufacturing, marketing, and retail.
Obesity has a major implications for the healthcare system in South Africa, as they are faced with increasing demand of care for health conditions related to obesity, such as diabetes, osteoarthritis, cancers, and major cardiovascular diseases. There is no single cause of all overweight and obesity, and there's no single approach to treating or preventing it. Treatment may include a mix of behavioral modifications, diet, exercise, and sometimes weight loss drugs. In some cases of extreme obesity, weight loss surgery may be an option.
Of course, you don't want to go that route of surgery. But anyway, chances are that you yourself are, or you know someone who's overweight or obese. But how would you know if you're overweight or obese? And worst of all, should you worry about it? Well, let's understand this a little more from our special guest, Dr. Sandeep Ruda. Dr. Ruda is an endocrinologist based at the Charlotte Matlaka Hospital in Johannesburg.
That's correct.
Dr. Ruda, welcome to Health Talk.
Thanks for having me again.
Right. Well, let's start from the basics. Oftentimes, of course, I said that, you wouldn't know whether you're overweight or obese.
Mm-hmm.
Let's help the public out there. What is being overweight and what is being obese? What's the difference?
So you can get a medical practitioner or a healthcare professional of any sort, a nurse, to work out something called the body mass index.
Right.
Which is really just a measurement of your weight in kilograms over height squared.
Yeah.
And we have certain cutoffs that define whether you're overweight or obese. So overweight would be classified as above a BMI of 25 and obese above 30.
Right.
Obviously, once you fall into those categories, the reason why we do that is you fall into a category for high risk of certain complications,
right.
and long-term effects, adverse health effects.
All right.
That's
We're
why
gonna
we do that.
we're gonna talk about children later on, but you mentioned BMI 25, BMI 30. What about in children?
In children, there are different ways of calculating it, but you look at the growth curves really, right? And there a good pediatrician or a child healthcare worker can work it out according to the growth curves really.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we mentioned a bit about statistics, that the prevalence, obviously the concern is that this is a growing problem. What have the trends, what have they been like over the past years? Why are we suddenly seeing such high rates of obesity?
Firstly, the trend is that the rates are going up. As you mentioned earlier, in Southern Africa especially, we're seeing increasing rates of obesity. In fact, the rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes, which is a corollary to obesity, the rates of increase in sub-Saharan Africa are gauged at about 109% over the next 15 years or so.
Right.
Highest in the world. And the reason for that is multifactorial, but mainly due to changing diets and sedentary nature of our lives, urbanization, modernization, and access to food, which is energy rich but nutrient poor. That's what's happening. Our diets have completely changed.
Yeah. Many people would say that, somebody that has a bit of weight actually looks healthy. Why should people worry if they're overweight or obese?
So you should worry if you're overweight or obese, because this is associated with the development of many health problems. Of note, the biggest problem is type 2 diabetes and the associated heart problems that go with it, cardiovascular as we say. So higher risk of heart attack, stroke, peripheral vascular disease, those sorts of things. But what we're realizing now, and there's a lot of scientific data and clinical data for this to show that being overweight and obese is associated with a higher risk of cancers, cognitive dysfunction, structural abnormalities like osteoarthritis, which physically inhibits you from working and functioning in society, lower back problems, etc. So the long-term fallout is massive, on your personal life, on your ability to work, on the economy as a whole, if many people are suffering from this. So there is this perception that being a little bit plump is healthy. That's a cultural perception.
Yeah.
But I think that needs to be moderated a bit. I think we need to think about what we're saying here, actually. You know?
Talk about that. I mean, then there's a concept of pot bellies or abdominal obesity, as we call it.
Yes.
Which in some circles is seen as a sign of wealth, a sign of success. You know,
well,
your comment on that?
That's especially true in Southern Africa. In South Africa, you know, we're still a relatively young democracy. We still have to mature. And I think there's a perception out there that success is associated with being, you know, financially secure, but with that comes all the access to the type of food people are eating in urban environments.
Yeah.
So people are overweight. The media portrays leaders and people in the entertainment industry and stuff as successful. A lot of these people are overweight and obese, so there's this perception. The other problem is in South Africa, where we also have a lot of communicable diseases, like chronic diseases like HIV, tuberculosis. There's also a perception that being underweight, there's a cultural perception there's something wrong with you, you know? Yeah. And I think it's very important for us as healthcare practitioners, government, to try and thwart that perception, because it's an incorrect perception, you know?
But coming then back to that issue of, you know, abdominal obesity versus, let's call it overall obesity.
Yes.
You know, are there any particular dangers around abdominal obesity as opposed to other forms of obesity?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so when we talk about abdominal obesity, we're talking about weight gain mainly around the waist.
Yeah.
And there's a term we use called visceral obesity, visceral fat or organ fat.
Yeah.
Now, all the studies show that fat around the waist is bad for you. It is what we call metabolically active fat, which produces havoc in your body. It disrupts your endocrine system, causes inflammation. It is what leads to insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, and then diabetes. And all of the hormonal changes that go on with having abdominal fat are the things that predispose you later to cancers, etc. as well.
Okay, so you might have an individual that looks perfectly okay, doesn't look overweight or anything like that, but has a huge pot belly.
Absolutely.
So you're basically saying that there's a danger in that.
Absolutely.
Now, how will people know that, you know, what's the sort of cutoff point? How will people know that, you know, this is okay and this is not okay?
There are certain cutoff points. You can work out a waist circumference, and a healthcare practitioner or a healthcare professional can do that for you by measuring your waist circumference at the appropriate site.
Yeah.
And the cutoff values for high-risk patients for males is 102 centimeters, for females around 88.
Yeah.
There are lower set points also marked, 94 centimeters in males and 80 centimeters in females for moderate risk. We don't have specific South African figures for our population. Remember, these measurements need to be ethnicity-based and that sort of thing. Yeah.
All right. I believe we have Lihle on the line from Bishop. Welcome to Health Talk, Lihle.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good, how are you? Your question or comment, please.
Okay, fine, thanks. My question, I want you to ask the doctor for me. Does he recommend the fat cutters like hairbags and everything that you will find at the chemist? Do they have any implications or do they have any problems maybe at a later stage? Because you'll find someone saying that I lost by 45 kg. Is that recommended that I may use?
All right. Okay, Lihle, excellent question. Thank you very much for that. We are going to touch on this, but not now. So if you just stay tuned, we will talk about how we tackle the problem of obesity, because this is an important one indeed. I mean, the question is around, you know, these supplements and all sorts of stuff that's sold at chemists. But let's hold it there. Hold your thought. Think about it. We'll come back to it. So please stay with us, because after the break, we now discuss challenges of childhood obesity. Don't go anywhere.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
What is beauty? Is it a view that's been waiting for you for centuries? A setting that gives you goosebumps when you see it for the first time? Is it a moment that stops you in your tracks and leaves you in awe? Some people spend their whole lives looking for it. When you open yourself up to it, suddenly you find yourself in a place where true beauty isn't something you'll ever see. Because when you meet South Africa, you'll reconsider what you think you know.
It is estimated that more than 30 million overweight children live in developing countries compared to 10 million in developed countries. According to the Heart and Stroke Foundation of South Africa, obesity has more than doubled since the 1980s. Childhood obesity is one of the most serious public health challenges of the 21st century. Overweight children are likely to become obese adults. They are more likely to develop diabetes and cardiovascular diseases at a younger age. These diseases are associated with a higher risk of premature death and disability. Experts say there are many possible causes for the increase in obesity.
The causes vary. There are environmental factors, there are social factors, there are cultural factors, there are family factors like the state of a pregnant mother. If you're obese as a mother, a pregnant mother, you're most likely to give birth to a child that is big.
Globalization, improving economic conditions, and changing dietary habits in developing countries contributes to the rapid increase in obesity.
The young children are presented with high blood pressure, and some of them may find it difficult breathing. And before, when you were a child and you had diabetes, it was always considered that it must be type 1 diabetes, which means you were born without a functioning insulin. But now you find children having type 2 diabetes, which is like lifestyle related. So diabetes now, type 2 diabetes, it is now an issue in young children.
Overweight and obesity were once considered problems afflicting only the wealthy. But people in poor communities are now suffering from lifestyle diseases which are linked to unhealthy diets and lack of adequate physical activity. Alim Milazi is a fitness expert and founder of Run Sharp. He started this Johannesburg-based NGO to teach children from disadvantaged communities about nutrition, good health, and exercise.
Run Sharp is a health initiative that promotes health among township youth, particularly in Soweto and Alexandra. We use the sport of running to promote health among the kids.
Both Ngayana and Milazi say young children are more vulnerable to diabetes and other health problems if they don't adhere to a healthy diet and exercise.
Even at school, the children that do not take part, in school activities, you find that then those are the ones that tend to gain weight, not only as like children, but even when they grow into adolescents, teenagers, and adulthood, then they just keep adding on weight, which can create like problems later in life.
The Run Sharp youth say the program has done a lot for them.
I started enjoying running in this year, and it benefited me a lot because now I have fitness and everything. My mentality is great. I can think clearly.
For me, it's good because I experience things like all kinds of marathon. Like now, 1st November, we're doing the Soweto Marathon. So yes, it's fun for me.
Health experts around the world say lack of information about nutrition, lack of access to healthy food, and poverty contribute to the problem. And in some societies, long-standing cultural beliefs also pose a challenge.
According to the World Health Organization guidelines, they recommend that if you are have a child, you must be breastfed exclusively for up to 6 months, which means you do not give your child anything else other than breast milk for 6 months. And then when you introduce the child to semi-solid foods, and then there is like a guideline, but you find that like in African families, you know, a child, like a 3-month-old child, they start trying to feed the child pap and things like that. So obviously that tends to make the child bigger than it's supposed to be.
The World Health Organization predicts that in the next 20 years, obesity-driven diabetes across sub-Saharan Africa will double. Research has also shown that undernourished children will have an increased risk of becoming obese. Experts say parents need to be educated and made aware of future health problems that children might encounter due to unhealthy weight.
So it appears that it's no longer a cool thing to say you have a chubby little kid who will overgrow this obesity problem later on in life. Or is it? Well, let's hear from our special guest. We still have Dr. Sandeep Ruda, endocrinologist based at Charlotte Matlake Hospital. We're now joined by a gentleman that you saw in one of the clips, Alim Milazi, who's founder of the Run Sharp program, who will tell us more about it. Welcome to Health Talk, Alim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. My apologies. And from our Cape Town studio, we're joined by Gabriel Exton. Gabriel is a nutritionist or dietitian based at the Heart and Stroke Foundation in Cape Town. Welcome to Health Talk, Gabriel.
Good morning, Doctor. Thank you for having me again.
All right. We'll come back to you just now, but I just want to start with you, Dr. Ruda. You know, this notion of diabetes has come up quite often in the clips, at least, that we've played, and in discussions we've had before. Now, there's a term diabesity, you know, that signifies this close link between obesity and diabesity. And diabetes, of course. Now, what impact has diabetes had, at least obesity had, on diabetes, especially in children?
So, I mean, if you want to think about it very simply, you can almost say that obesity is almost going to be a precursor to diabetes or the development of diabetes. You are very high risk to develop diabetes if you are obese. And you think about it also, I mean, if you're an obese person, you're already at high cardiovascular risk of complications, heart attacks, etc. So developing diabetes is just another risk factor that amplifies that risk of cardiovascular disease. But that in itself needs specific treatment then, which then obviously involves a more involved approach in treating those patients, and then greater cost, of course. You know?
I mean, the other interesting thing is that type 2 diabetes has always known to be, I mean, in the previous terminology, adult onset, as it were. It was something exclusively seen in adults. And now we're seeing a lot of type 2 diabetes in children.
Well,
could it be because of obesity?
Well, it absolutely is, and it's also related to what we're eating and how sedentary we are. But we no longer teach that. You know, type 2 diabetes is no longer just an adult onset issue. It is an epidemic amongst young children and teenagers especially, right? And even with the ones that develop the autoimmune type 1 diabetes, we are starting to see a type 1, type 2 picture, where even they are putting on weight. So yes, it's very prevalent, and we no longer teach that anymore.
Lastly, any genetic predisposition to obesity?
So I think that's a myth. We must first of all dispel that obesity is driven by genetics, all right? Genetics do play a role, but a very small role. Of all of the multiple genes that have been identified that may contribute towards obesity, the contribution is very little, sometimes up to 50, 100 grams per gene that's present. The rare forms of obesity that cause obesity, if you inherit it, are very rare, and that is not the cause of the epidemic.
So it's mainly a lifestyle
I think lifestyle is driving the whole process.
Okay, let's invite Alim here. Alim, you run this Run Sharp program. You deal quite a lot with youth and young people in the townships of Alexander and so forth. Just tell us a little bit, first of all, about your program, insofar as it relates to those that come to you and the sort of risk factors that you pick up in communities around, obesity.
So yeah, thanks again for having me. Yeah, the Run Sharp program basically aims to promote health and a healthy lifestyle among township youth. specifically in Soweto and Alexandra. Those are the two places that we work in. Our work is supported by the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and what we do is we work primarily through youth welfare organizations because they have their hand on the pulse in terms of the community. So through them, we're able to identify kids that ordinarily perhaps wouldn't have access to sports, but also that have an interest in sports. And through sports, we then expose them to the benefits of living a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
So
But it's primarily sports. I mean, you may have kids that are a little bit chubby, overweight, whatever, who may not feel confident enough to participate in sport. Yes. What do you do in those instances?
So we deal with a variety of kids. They're not necessarily, obese. Some of them come from different backgrounds. So some of them may come from broken homes, for instance, divorced parents, single parents. So the idea of bringing them into the program is to, through lifestyle wellness education, is to help them to become more confident, to become more health conscious about pursuing a healthy lifestyle.
Okay.
And we just do that through a variety of educational workshops. So for instance, we'll expose them to anti-doping, to financial literacy as well. And there's also health and health science medicine and sports medicine as well.
So it's a more holistic program.
It's a holistic program that looks at a variety of issues, yes.
Okay, just hold it there because we have Vusi on the line from Soweto. Welcome, Vusi.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Your question or comment, please.
Yeah, I just want to find out, for someone who's 33, is 20 kg obesity?
Sorry, I didn't get that?
For someone who's 33, is 200 kg obesity or what?
For someone who's 23 years of age?
No, 33.
33 years?
Yeah, 200 kg, is it obesity or what?
200? Sorry, I can't get the question.
200 kg.
200 kgs?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your question. Very, very,
I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You don't even have to work out a BMI there.
Yeah.
I mean, 200 kgs is a lot of weight, and that would clearly be an obese individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps, the one easier way that I find to explain the whole notion of BMI is to get people to take the weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters. The answer that you get, you divide it again by the height in meters, and the final answer will be your BMI. All right? All right. Let's hold it and get across to Gabriel in Cape Town. Gabriel, talking about obesity in children, clearly nutrition is a major problem. I mean, this is where really we should be starting to talk around those risk factors for obesity in children. Your thoughts around that, please.
Yes, thank you. I think the first thing that I just want to clear up, which I think is very important for parents at home to know, is that BMI is a very useful tool for adults.
Right.
In children, you can still do an BMI, but it doesn't directly tell us whether your child is overweight or not. We do need to look at the growth charts to see that. So you can have a 10-year-old boy at home with a BMI of 23, which would be normal for an adult, but that child can actually be obese. So we have to look at those growth charts very importantly. If we then look at what causes obesity, specifically from a nutrition point of view, yes, we know genetics plays a small role. It's not as important as the endocrinologist already said. So what we're looking at nutritionally is what happens in the home firstly. So we see often adults that are obese have obese children, and the thing we think first is this is genetic. Most of the cases that is not the case, but actually we're seeing similar habits developing in the children as in the adults, and that's very important. So what happens in the home environment, very important. Also what happens in the first 1,000 days of that child's life, which means from conception, what happens during pregnancy, what happens with exclusive breastfeeding is protective against obesity, and then how is that child weaned, and what kind of foods do that child start eating on a regular basis. And then the third thing we look at, which is just as important, is the environment surrounding the household. And what we often say is these children live in an obesogenic environment, which means it's easier to become obese than it used to be, because we have food marketing, aggressively marketing unhealthy foods to children. physical activity is not as easy, as accessible, as affordable. Foods that are affordable are often unhealthy foods, which makes it easier for children to become overweight, which puts more responsibility on the parents, as well as us as a society and a government to try and change the situation through policy making, through education, to make it easier to make the healthy food choices.
Yeah. And that change is urgent. Now, before we go for a break, I believe we have Mzilani from Giyani on the line for us. Welcome to Health Talk, Mzilani.
Hello, yes, it's Nzalama from Giyani.
Nzalama, yes, my apologies,
Yes, I work in Kandla Hospital in KZN as a dietitian.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment in that, poverty plays a very important role in the development of obesity, in a sense that usually the foods that would be much cheaper do contain a lot of fat. If you look, for example, at these outlets that are selling chicken, you find that they are selling the skin of chicken for a much lesser price, probably maybe a bag of skins for around maybe around 20 rand, wherein when you for food that contains, for food that is at around 20 rand that is healthy, you probably get nothing.
Yeah.
So most of our poor communities, they end up buying food that are basically cheaper and contain a lot of fat. And as a result, that contributes in people eating a lot of fat. So it's not necessarily people who've got a lot of money that will end up being obese, but people that are poor because they end up buying cheaper food, which.
Yeah, very true. That. Thank you very much, Nzalama, for your contribution. All right. Okay, so how does obesity impact on prospects of employment? That and more after the break. Stay with us.
Cut! Point! Sit!
Get behind Rugby World Cup 2015 on SABC.
SABC News. We report, contextualize, and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly, and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful, and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate, and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back to Health Talks. So how likely are you to get employed if you're obese? Are there industries where obesity is a barrier to entry? How does obesity impact on productivity at the workplace? Well, our guest will enlighten us on this. We still have Dr. Sandeep Ruda, endocrinologist, Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, and Alim Milazi, founder of Run Shop. Now, before we get into our discussion, I believe we have Lerato on the line. Lerato from Soweto, welcome to Health Talk.
Hello.
Yes, Lerato.
I'm
Limpopo,
Lerato sorry. Limpopo, not Soweto.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I'm having my sister's son who had psychosis due to drug-induced, taking drugs, and then she got psychotic and she was put on antipsychotic drugs.
Yes.
He's currently on antipsychotic drugs, but he has gained a lot of weight.
Okay.
So how can we help him in connection with that? Because
all right.
he has never been overweight all along. He was on sports all the time, but now the weight that he has gained is amazing.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for your question. We'll try and answer the question. Dr. Ruda?
I think in that case it can be very difficult. Obviously, I mean, look, ultimately weight is driven by energy intake, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in those kinds of circumstances, the drugs that need to treat the primary condition can have an effect on the patient's cravings for food, inhibitions, etc. And usually food intake is increased.
Yeah.
And I would advise that they work closely with a physician or diabetologist or someone like that who can assist, and with a good dietitian as well, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, I suppose, you know, it's a difficult one. It's not so much the fact that it's the medication that's, you know, making the person to become more obese, but rather the side effect that affects the hunger, as it were. All right, let's get back to the issue of obesity and employment. I mean, this can be quite a major problem for people. We do know that there are industries, for instance, you know, you can't join the police if you're overweight or if you are obese, because well, for a fact, yes, I do know at least. Yeah, if your BMI is over 30. Obviously, this is the time that you join the police. Okay, we're not going to comment about what happens afterwards. All right, but the impact that obesity can have on prospects of employment, your comment?
So obviously you cannot discriminate against anyone for being obese in any environment. However, if the obesity is going to impair work and safety, especially in the skilled labor industry or manual work industry, then I think you know, employers are at liberty to say, well, this is a danger. An example we can use is obese diabetic patients, you know, using drugs can cause low sugars, that sort of thing. But then also the physical impairment of doing work, you know, climbing stairs, that sort of thing. You become unproductive, inefficient. So these things need to be considered. One of the big impacts of obesity on the individual is the development of osteoarthritis and bone problems, you know, and that can lead to a significant loss of productivity, pain, etc. The other thing we're seeing is absenteeism from work. Because of the associated complications of diabetes. An interesting word that we came across recently in a Lancet article on obesity is presenteeism, that people stay at work longer because it's taking them that much longer to finish a given task.
It's got another connotation to it, but we'll come back to that. We have Bulani on the line from Pretoria. Welcome to Health Talk, Bulani.
Hello, and how are you?
Good, how are you? Your quick question or comment, please.
I'm fine. I'm a dietitian working in Soshanguve in Pretoria.
Right.
I would like to make a comment as to add on the topic that you are discussing today.
Right.
As health professionals, we do have health professionals who are also obese.
Oh, yes, that's an important one.
And I'm on to the point that what do we do as health professionals through the community? Do we practice what we do? Not to say that it is wrong to be obese or to be overweight as a dietitian or as a nurse or as a doctor, but what do you do about it?
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much for your comment. It's a question of do as I tell you, don't worry about how I look, but you know, obesity is wrong for you. Very important point. But before I get your comment, let's ask you, you deal with youngsters. Obviously, we're talking about prospects for employment and so on, and you're dealing with youngsters that are getting ready to enter the employment world. Obesity, you know, their confidence levels and so on. Your comment on that, please.
Yeah, I think the important thing is to make the kids obviously health conscious and and confident about however they may appear. We all know that youth, teenagers, a lot of what they do and a lot of what they perceive is based on how other people, you know, think of them.
Right.
So one of the things that we constantly try to do with the kids is to make sure that, one, they develop their self-confidence, their esteem, so that when they go to an interview situation or a learnership, they're able to articulate themselves confidently, comfortably, even to the extent where they're able to talk openly about how they appear. Because as you have highlighted, sometimes we are judged by how we look, and it's not a fair thing. But if you're comfortable about your appearance and how you are, then it doesn't necessarily.
Although the idea is not to be comfortable in being obese, and I mean we should be driving the message that people shouldn't get there in the first place. Okay. You know, we seem to be getting quite a lot of questions. Please don't forget that question around obese health workers. But let's take a call from Lerato from Soweto. Lerato, welcome to Health Talk. Lerato from Soweto, are you there? Okay, we seem to have lost Lerato. Your quick comment before we go on break. Healthcare professionals, it is a fact. Some of them are, as part of the community, overweight and obese. Yeah?
I think it's a very important point because, obesity is a systemic problem. It's not a problem of the patient versus the healthcare worker. Ultimately, we can't wave an admonishing finger at the patient and say, you must do that when I'm sitting here obese and indulging unhealthy.
So this message is to everybody, including healthcare professionals.
And the best way to change society is to first change yourself.
Good. Yeah. Okay, Lerato is back from Soweto. Hello, Lerato. Lerato, are you with us?
Hello.
Yes, Lerato. Your quick question or comment, please.
Hello, you're speaking with Shireen.
Oh, Shireen. Sorry, we got it wrong there. My apologies, yeah?
Again.
All right. Please,
Okay, I've got a friend with a little 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And the little one is about 32 kgs. And she just loves eating, but extremely active.
Okay.
She's really active, and the problem is that, the mom tries now to put her on a diet at home, and when she goes to school and her sandwiches are not to her liking, she won't do her schoolwork. She's very sad. And the teacher called the mom to say that, please give her what she wants, because then she does her work very well when she's happy with her food.
I see. All right. Okay. That's an interesting question. Thank you very much for the question. We will try and address that question when we come back from the break. So, of course, we answer the question, just how can we tackle obesity in children and adults? That and more after the break. Stay with us.
Africa's tech scene is constantly coming up with innovative ways to answer some of the continent's problems.
We source content from social media, from our mobile apps, from our website.
And as people move from phone calls to data, companies have to switch what they offer.
People expect to get higher speeds, better quality broadband for less.
On Network, we have information on Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
Welcome back. Now, if obesity is associated with such level of disability and ill health, prevention, of course, is of paramount importance. Now, according to experts, treatment of obesity can reverse most of those undesirable health risks. So how can this be achieved? Well, let's get this from our guests, Dr. Sandeep Ruda, endocrinologist, Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. And we have Alim Millers, founder of Run Shop program. And in our Cape Town studio, Gabriel Eckstein, dietitian from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Now, let's talk solutions. First of all, clearly prevention. Let's start with children and perhaps pick up on the last caller about children being, I don't know whether they get themselves or, they get put in that situation where they're able to demand more food because, they can't concentrate in class and so on. Your comment, Alim?
I think the important thing is education, and I think also the important thing is parents should play an exemplary role, because after all, kids emulate their parents. Yeah. So in terms of the habits that parents should encourage their kids to do, play more outdoors, less TV time, healthier food choices. After all, the parent does have a significant influence of, how kids should ultimately be healthy and live healthy lives. Yeah.
All right. We're going to cross to Cape Town now, but I believe Lerato is back on the line. Let's give it a last shot. Lerato, are you with us?
Yes, I am. How are you guys?
We're good. Your quick question or comment, please.
Yes, I've got a question for Alim.
Yeah.
I just want to find out, I see he's got a great program going on. However, he mentioned that they only concentrate on Alex and Soweto.
Right.
I want to find out if maybe in the near future would he look at growing his program into other townships.
Okay. Quick answer, Alim?
Yes. By all means, yes.
All right. Okay. Let's go to Cape Town and talk to Gabriel Exton. Gabriel, we're talking, the difficult issue around nutrition for children, as in trying to address this problem of obesity. Your comments, please.
I think what we just touched on is so important is what is the parent's role? We know obesity is complex and we need to look wider as that as well. But when we look at home, the parents are the role models, but they're also the gatekeepers for what happens in that child's life. What are the regular foods that these children eat? What is the norm within the household? We all know that things like sugar sweetened beverages, so your fizzy drinks, your sweets, your chocolates, these things play a big role. And we need to make sure that our kids understand what are healthy foods and what are those occasional treats that they should not be eating on a regular basis, but they should be eating less often. So it's very important for us to start as early as we can to try and make those healthy habits for our children. When we get to even 6, 7, 8 years old, it becomes much, much more difficult once the habits are already ingrained. So for those parents that are starting out, you still have a clean slate and you can start early to prevent. Once you get later on, it's not too late, you can still make changes. And then it's then about making changes together with our children, so talking to our children about it as well, but looking at making substitutions for things like those sugary drinks, looking at the portion sizes, looking at what is drunk on a regular basis, but also remember that there is a parent-child relationship where the parent is the one that makes the ultimate decisions about what is happening in the household, because often I think children have too much of a say too early on about what they want to eat and what they don't want to eat.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's also the notion that children, often throw tantrums and what have you, and for the child to just, get peace and quiet and get that child out of the way, they will feed the child with sweets and whatever else that the child demands. Isn't that so? But having said that, there's the other side as well, and we can talk about what the responsibility of the parent in terms of, what he or she puts in the lunch box and so on. But the schools. If you go to the tuck shops in the schools, this is where you get all this fizzy drinks, the sugary stuffs, and the sweets and so on. Your comment on what schools can do in that regard?
I think that's very important. We know that our children are going to spend a long time at school every day. And yes, we should be putting a lunchbox in, but in reality, we know that most children in South Africa going to school don't take a lunchbox with them, which means when they get to school, what is available? And often, as we say, it's those fizzy drinks, it's the chips, it's all those kind of things. So yes, firstly, we should look at making school lunchbox tuck shops healthier. We as a Heart Foundation are trying to do that with our program, and the government is also trying to play a role in it. I think that's very important. But the other thing we should also not forget at school is education about what is healthy food, how to make healthy food choices. And we've seen from various examples across the world, if we can teach our children clear, concise information at school about what they should and should not be doing, that can have a significant impact.
We spoke about sugary drinks now. Your view on a possible sugar tax?
Yes, I think Jamie Oliver is doing a great thing at the moment in England, and I hope that we can do something similar to that in South Africa. I think that sugar tax is quite a small increase on the price. I don't know how big the impact of that will be. One of the other things that he's doing at the moment is also looking at the marketing of those unhealthy foods. And in South Africa, we are trying to get new legislation in as well, which I would think can make a very big impact, because I think the marketing of these foods to children is a very important thing to address. If these children see these things all the time, they see it in the shop, they see it on the TV, they see it associated with all their favorite characters on TV, it becomes very difficult for parents to say no all the time.
Okay, all right. Let's get back to you, Dr. Ruda. Essentially around treatment for obesity. I mean, this is a contentious issue. There's that one caller that we had that, asked the question around, can I go buy, I'll mention it because he mentioned Hebex, the stuff that's sold at pharmacies and so on.
Yeah.
Your word on what people should do and how they should treat the issue around getting treated for obesity?
I think it cannot be overemphasized that diet and exercise, not being sedentary, are ultimately the most important thing.
Yeah.
In a population like ours, where we have mixed socioeconomic circumstances, etc., I would stay away from diet supplements, etc., because these things cost a lot of money. The evidence base for them is poor. And you'll see in practice that most of them fail ultimately because diet and exercise has not been attended to, you know.
But to talk about diet, I mean, then there's the issue of people going on diets to have a quick fix solution to say, listen, you know, getting married next week, I need to lose 10 kilograms or 20 kilograms.
Well, this is the thing. I think we must spread the message here that, you know, changing your diet isn't about losing weight for vanity. It's about long-term health consequences, cause and effect, you know. And unfortunately, quick fix diets also don't work. This is about applying lifestyle changes for the long term, because as we stand, abnormal has become normal.
Okay.
And we need to
Unfortunately,
step out of that.
we've run out of time, but Alim, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Tell us about how you deal with the issue of, you know, trying to encourage positive lifestyles among youth.
I think with youth, the main thing is making sure that you get them together as a group, because they feed off each other in terms of seeing how other peers, you know, perform, encouraging each other to take positive habits. So a lot of what we do is group-based activities, and that is an important factor in helping them see that, you know, it's possible to lead a possible healthy lifestyle.
Adim Milazi, Dr. Sandeep Ruda, thank you for being part of this show. It's been such an awesome one. Well, folks, it's clear that the best long-term approach to tackling overweight and obesity is prevention from childhood. Preventing overweight and obesity in children is critical, particularly through improving diet and increasing physical activity levels, as you've heard. So it's on that note that we come to the end of our show today. Join us again next week, SABC News. And a reminder to please share your views and comments with us. Facebook, SABC Health Talk, and follow us on Twitter at SABC Health Talk. Remember, you can watch a repeat of this show at 2 p.m. today or Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. And if you've missed any of our previous shows, YouTube is there. You can get all our shows. I'm Dr. Silo Mcdowell. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all those who called. Please do take care.